If we haven't met yet, my name's Andrew, and I get to be one of the pastors here at Lake Forest. And man, did y'all hear that? After a song like that, I don't know what you say. Some of y'all have lived that in your life. Those words, I'd rather have sticks and stones. I'd rather have broken bones because I know that bruises will heal. And cuts will seal, but the words you say to me, they beat the life out of me. I like it when y'all talk back to me, and just honestly, this sermon's going to have some hard stuff in it. And so maybe you didn't grow up in a church or church at all or a church that talks, but I'll give you a few examples of things you can say when something's hard. You can say, my. You can say, God help. You can say my favorite from Full House, have mercy. So why don't you turn to your neighbor and just say, have mercy? Because all of us have lived and experienced the truth of that song, that it is a lie that we were taught, that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. This past weekend, I was in Asheville on a mission trip with 14 of my new best friends, and we were serving largely among people who are unhoused, homeless, and folk. And we were sitting in a garden, hanging out, just loving on folk, talking, playing chess, and somebody went to repeat that cliche. And they got to about sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. And before they could put a period on that sentence, a woman sitting over here, deep in conversation with somebody else, not even involved in the conversation that was happening, heard the cliche, turned around and said, "Liar!" That is a lie. That is a lie. And so this morning I came to pass along the wisdom that my homeless friend in Asheville has, that is a lie. And many of you know from your own experience, many of you know that if there was like a spiritual sonogram at the door on the way in, or an emotional x-ray as you came through those doors, that it would reveal massive internal bleeding. That there would be catastrophic trauma to your heart and mind from words that beat the life out of you. Words you wish you could forget. Words from 20, 30 years ago. And you know that if it had been a bruise or a cut, it'd be gone. But those words have opened a wound that is still as fresh as it was that first day. My. And today, we get a reminder, not just from my homeless friend, but from a very special guest. James, the brother of Jesus. James, the brother of Jesus. Let that sink in for a minute. James, the brother of Jesus. It's an astounding reality that we have a document written by the brother of Jesus. That's mind-boggling. We have nothing written by Jesus but his brother. What's even cooler is that James didn't believe his brother was the Messiah, the Son of God, any of that. James, like the rest of his brothers and mother, believed their son that believed Jesus was crazy, or at least hyperbolic or delusional. And they told him so, right up until the point where they watched Jesus get nailed to a tree and laid in a tomb. And right up until the point when Jesus walked back out of that tomb, the evidence that Jesus is resurrected from the dead, that just is that his own brother believed it and died preaching it. You might decide you're the Son of God, but let me know when your brother believes it. The one you grew up with. But James is writing this incredible wisdom about the applications of his brother's life and message, and he's writing to the early church, and he writes this truth that we all know. He writes to communicate this reality that your words are powerful. That your words are powerful. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, your words are powerful. That was weak sauce. Find a neighbor and tell them, your words are powerful. All right, good. Now to yourself, now talk to the other voice inside your head and say, my words are powerful. My words are powerful. Or the way James says it in two powerful metaphors. The first is a forest fire. He says, consider, friends, how great a forest is destroyed by a single spark. And the tongue is also a fire. It is a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body and sets the whole course of one's life on fire and is itself set on fire by hell. Can I get a have mercy? Have mercy. The tongue is also a fire, and it corrupts the whole body and the whole course of your life, and it sets things on fire, for it itself was set on fire by hell. He doesn't mean the literal place. He just means that before you were born with the pilot light of this flamethrower lit by the evil one, by the devil, and that you and I use words flippantly when in reality, I may burn my house down by playing with matches. I may burn down the neighborhood with matches, but with my words, I can burn down my family. With my words, I can destroy my marriage. With nothing but words on this stage, I can lose my job today. There are things I could say right now, and next week, Denise and Mark would come up on stage and they'd say, hey, y'all remember Andrew? He's gone. With words. And James says, consider how great a forest is lit on fire. Think about this for a second. I was driving south on 85 just yesterday and looking at the haze, the smoke, the fog from those fires burning in Canada. I've never been to Canada. I can't see Canada. And yet my life, my health, my family's health is being affected by fires thousands of miles away. You see, we tend to think our words are like, small and insignificant. They may hurt, they may like sear you a little bit, but Jesus' brother James is saying, no, your words start forest fires. Look at this picture that I found of what a forest fire can do. Look at this. Thousands of acres. I did a little bit of research and found out we're talking 40 million acres of land. 40 million acres of land. We're talking $18 billion worth of property that has been destroyed. Whole cities gone, wiped off the map. All of the possessions. And James is saying, your tongue, your mouth, your words can destroy not just your life. They can destroy your family, your community, your neighborhood, your nation. Words that start fires can burn down lives, can destroy careers. I love the Bible because sometimes it's so true. I can't argue with it even when I don't want to believe it. And one of those places is in the Proverbs that James knew and is quoting over and over again without saying it. But Proverbs says it this way, hundreds of years before James. In Proverbs 26, it says, like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is the one that deceives their neighbor and says, I was only joking. I don't think y'all heard it. Let me say it again. Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is the person who tells sarcastic jokes, who makes fun of another human being, and then says, I was just joking. Who tells lies and deceit, and then when they get caught says, oh, I was just tricking you. Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows. Somebody better say, have mercy. Have mercy. You all know this reality. You know it because you've suffered from it. You come in with scorch marks and scars from other people's words. We all come in with third-degree burns to the soul. Sometimes from people we don't even know. Thanks to the internet, I can destroy somebody's life without ever seeing them. Some of you come in this morning and you have scars from racial slurs and misogynistic assumptions, from thoughtless words and sarcastic jokes. You have lived and survived a forest fire. But Jesus' brother James, the brother of Jesus, he's not done. He says, words are also like poison. Look at this, verse 8, he says, the tongue is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. You see, forest fires destroy from the outside, but how does poison work? On the inside. What's fascinating about poison is it looks harmless. It even tastes harmless most of the time. If it weren't for the label that says, if you drink this, you will die, that little like yellow and black skull face label, we couldn't recognize it. And so our words feel harmless. They even feel delicious. They feel hilarious, but they are poison. They destroy us from the inside. They rot us from the inside. The stuff that comes out of our mouth and the stuff that goes into our ears is battery acid, is arsenic, and it infects us. And even if it doesn't kill us, like poison, it has lasting effects on our body. Some of you, like me, you're coming in here and you're suffering. You're suffering from spiritual neuropathy. You have emotional necrosis because of words that were spoken over you or at you or about you. Maybe as a kid you were poisoned. Maybe you were poisoned with lies like women can't do that. Like unless somebody loves you, you have no value. Like your only value is in your beauty. Maybe you were poisoned with the same kind of lies that taught you that some races or nations or nationalities or even languages are that are more inferior, that are less human, that are less worthy of your respect and honor and dignity, less made in the image of God. Maybe you inherited that trauma, that cultural trauma of growing up black or brown in this community and having to put up with people like me in high school, telling and laughing at racist jokes, and being a high school boy believing the misogynistic assumptions about women. Maybe you were poisoned as a kid. Because you see, like Proverbs 18 tells us, the tongue has the power of life and death. The tongue has the power of life and death. And we all know this. We've grown up. If you have lived more than a week, you've experienced this. You know the reality of these simple truths, but words have power. But not all words are weighted equally. Not all words are equally weighted. I love it when science confirms what the Bible already teaches us, that words aren't equal. You know this if you have done any professional training. Managers, teachers, overseers, how many positive comments does it take to cancel out one negative one? I don't know either, but a bunch. It's like CPR, the numbers keep changing. Because you don't remember the nice things your English teacher wrote on that paper in 11th grade. But you can remember what your baseball coach said when you made an error. Negative words hit harder, stick longer, burn hotter. But it's not just the kind of words, it's also the source, the person saying it. And you know this. The more you respect a person, the more their words can sear and burn. Strangers can hurt me with their words. People can comment on my sermons, and it hurts. But my wife, she can eviscerate me. We have a no sermon comment rule between lunch and dinner on Sundays because I'm just too weak. Moms, your words have weight. The words you say to your kids, the words you speak about them, the dreams you prophesy into their life carry weight. And dads, I don't know why this is. Dads, I have no idea why the world is made this way other than God chose it to be so. But dads, your words matter the most. Your positive words and your negative words. Even as pastors, I can sit in counseling and affirm somebody's worth and dignity. I can say, I see you and you are beloved and you are awesome and fearfully, wonderfully made. You are forgiven and loved and healed. And have people look me in the eyes and say, I wish my dad would say that. You know, you can have a coach say, I'm proud of you, and it doesn't hold the same. And kids, which is all of us, right? You didn't get here without a mom or dad. Your words matter to your mom and dad. And we all know this, and yet we fail to use our words like this is true. I love James again. James says it so plainly. He says, we all stumble in all kinds of ways. And in a Baptist church, we'd all say, amen. Anyone, though, James says, anyone who's never at fault in what they say is perfect, and he's able to keep their whole body in check. James is saying that this is the most dangerous thing I have. Everything else is easy to control. He goes on to say in verse 7 and 8, he says, look, all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by humankind, but no human can tame the tongue. No human can tame the tongue. No human. He's like, y'all have got that whole lions and tigers and bears thing under control through like electric fences and doors and locks, but y'all can't figure out these vocal cords. You would have more luck. You'd have more luck wrestling an alligator than wrestling with your speech. The reality is that we have all suffered wounds from people's words, but we've also caused those wounds. We all have scorch marks, but we have also started some forest fires. We've also spiked some other people's souls with poisonous lies that we propagated and then tried to justify with little phrases like, oh, I didn't mean it, I wasn't thinking. Or I didn't mean it, I was just angry. Or I didn't mean it, I was just drunk. Or I didn't mean it, I know I have. I know I'm guilty of these things, of words that I can hear myself saying as I look back down the hall of my life. And I see those words coming out. Those angry words to my mom. Those jokes that I laughed at and told. Those things I yelled at somebody on the interstate because they weren't meeting my standards of driving. Those things I have yelled at the TV screen because some 21-year-old kid didn't meet my vicarious dreams in a professional sports league that I'll never play in. And every time as I look into history or as they happen again, I find myself saying the same thing. Why did I say that? Why did I say it? God, why? Why did I say that? Turn to your neighbor and just practice that phrase. Why did I say that? We're going to practice. You didn't say anything wrong. Don't worry. I'm not making you confess to anything yet. But why did I say that? Well, if I can try to answer that question, let me introduce you to two of my friends. This is Mr. and Mrs. Cup. Mr. and Mrs. Cup met in a coffee shop one day, and they thought each other was pretty interesting. They started hanging out, and he was amazed by her. She was all sunny and bubbly. She was a just bright spot in the world around her. She was in color when the whole world was in gray. Oh, but Mr. Cup was full of gold stars and gold bullion, which evidently those standards have changed. Now it seems like the only thing men have to do to be considered worthy of dating is not live at home and have a job. Like, ladies, raise your standards. Raise your standards. But no, Mr. Cup was, he was so sparkly and shiny. He doted on her. He gave her gifts. He showed up. He didn't live at home with his parents. He had a job, not a career, but a job. It was, he was headed in the right direction. And so they cozy up and they start to become friends. And then they start dating. And then everything's great and wonderful. And then one day they do that courageous, terrifying, awful, stupid thing. He goes with her to meet her family. And they get there, and she's doing her very best to make sure he doesn't see any of the crazy going on. And he's doing his very best not to trip on any of the crazy that's happening around him. And things are getting a little shaky, and they finally do the wise thing, and they leave. And they get in the car, and he says, "Wow. I didn't know your mom had issues." And she says, "What do you mean my mom has issues?" And they start to bump into each other. And all of a sudden, words start coming out. Things start falling out of them. And then they get home, praise God. And she runs off to her girlfriend's house, and she finds her girlfriend and says, "I didn't know he had anger issues. I didn't know that was in him. I didn't know he could be that way." And he doesn't go anywhere. He goes to the recliner and he sits and broods, because men, we don't talk enough to other actual human beings. The voices in your head don't count. But he sits in his recliner and he says, "God, I didn't know she was one of those. Where did all that come from? Where did those kinds of words? And everything was fine. I didn't know she had that in her." And she just says, she just makes me so angry when she says that stuff. Things just come out of me and I can't help it. It's all her fault. And she says, "God, he makes me so mad. How am I supposed to not make fun of him when he says something that stupid?" And they both think the problem is the other person. If so-and-so just wouldn't do it, I wouldn't say. But the truth of cups is that comes out of you because that is in you. You see, we spend a lot of time polishing up the outsides when Jesus said it is whatever the heart is full of, that's what comes out of your mouth. The mouth speaks whatever the heart is full of. The mouth speaks whatever the heart is full of. And so the truth about Mr. Cup is he says those things because that's what's in him. And the truth about me is those things come out of my mouth because those things are in me. I think about James using two more metaphors. He uses the images of riding a horse and the images of riding a ship. And everything on horses is great and fine until the horse gets spooked. And then the horse that is your mouth and life just starts to go crazy. And everything's fine on a ship until you hit a storm, and then both of you are quivering and banging into each other. But it's not just when we're afraid, and it's not just when we're in friction. Because remember, we grew up in this world. And the things that were said to us did damage to us. Like words spoken to us, they crack us, break us, pierce us. And even when we're not angry, we leak. The best of us leaks on the people we love and on the strangers we think we'll never meet again. Jesus gets this lesson and teaches it so right. Claire, I've ruined a pair of pants. I'm sorry. Claire's my wife. I'm not talking to voices in my head right now. But the truth is, the stuff that comes out of us because it's in us. And you have to admit, whether you are a Christian or not a Christian, that Jesus makes sense here. That the mouth speaks whatever is in the heart. He says, he goes on in Matthew 15 to say it this way to his disciples. He says, are y'all so dull? Don't you understand that whatever enters the mouth goes to the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart. And it is these things that defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder and adultery and sexual immorality, theft, false testimony and slander. These are the things that defile a person. But eating with unwashed hands does not defile them. You see, Jesus is saying something radical here. He's saying the bad people in the world aren't just the people who have done bad things, but also the people who have said bad things. Because the words that come out of me reveal what I would do if there were no consequences. And so when I curse, when I yell at, when I blaspheme, when I wish out of existence that person, when I curse that person, I'm admitting if it weren't illegal, I'd probably kill him. When I objectify that woman with my words, I'm admitting, yeah, I probably would if it wouldn't destroy everything. That I am what I hate, and it comes out because the words that I say are not accidents, they are symptoms. God have mercy. The words that come out in those thoughtless moments are not accidents, they are symptoms. The racist joke or the misogynistic assumption or the sarcasm doesn't tell you I'm funny. It tells you that there is racism in here. And so, what do we do? What do we do? Jesus says these things defile us. Defile is a word that just means it puts us at odds with God. It's the same idea as poisoning. It destroys me and everyone I love. It is fire that is spreading. God, what do I do? God, have mercy. James doesn't give us an answer outright or clear. But he asks us to think using these images. And this image of a horse, this image of a ship, he references both a writer and a pilot. He says the tongue is kind of like the bit in a horse's mouth or the rudder of a ship, but the rudder doesn't control the ship and the bit doesn't control the horse, the rider and the pilot do. And so James is begging us to ask, who is the pilot of your heart? Who is the pilot of your life? Who is the Lord of your tongue? Who is the Lord of your heart? Because the real truth of the matter is that we don't need better filters. We need new hearts. We don't need better political correctness. We need internal transformation. We need internal transformation, and we spend too much time painting the outside of the cup while the heart is unchanged. We need new hearts. And this is exactly what God promises and what God wants to give to you this morning. God has been promising this for years, for millennia. In Ezekiel 11, he says it this way. He says, I will give them an undivided heart, and I will put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. And then they will follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. They will be my people, and I will be their God. You notice the order of that? All right, let's read it because Ezekiel repeats himself. Chapter 36. God wants you to hear this so much, he says it again. He says, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone, and you give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you, and you will move, and I will move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. And then you will live in the land that I give your ancestors, and you will be my people, and I will be your God, and I will save you from all of your uncleanliness. God doesn't promise you a filter, but a new heart. But think about what that requires. Think about what a heart transplant requires. If my friend Arthur, who was on stage here yesterday, he would tell you he's in organ procurement and donations and facilitating that, or as he likes to tell me, he sells body parts for a living. That's a little too close to home for some of you, I'm sorry. But what does it take for you to get a heart transplant? What would it take for me to get a heart transplant? Somebody's got to die. Somebody's got to die. I have to have a donor. Somebody has to die in order for there to be a new heart for me to get. But more than that, I have to die. In a real way, I have to voluntarily die. I have to say, yes, you can cut me open, and yes, you can take that thing inside of me that keeps me alive. You can take it out. And for whatever time it takes for you to get a new one in me, I'll be dead. I don't know if that's 8 seconds or 8 minutes. I haven't done any research on heart transplants. But I know somebody's got to die to give the heart up. And I have to voluntarily let somebody take my heart out and die to get a new heart. The same is true of our hearts and our words. And so we go back to Mr. and Mrs. Cup, and this time we introduce Jesus into the equation. Because you see, Jesus, who is clothed in light and splendor, who is beyond our wildest dreams, who is purer than the white-driven snow, who is without spot or stain or blemish, who is the word of life, comes and he says, give me your words, your filth. And he comes and he literally, historically submits to all the angry words of humanity. You've been called crazy or weird or strange. So was Jesus. You've been called by racial and ethnic slurs. So was Jesus. You've been typecast and stereotyped because of your family of origin. So was Jesus. You've been put out and mocked by government leaders and religious leaders and social leaders. So was Jesus. Your family has ridiculed you. So was Jesus. People have damned you and wished you out of existence. I wish you were never born. So was Jesus. For there 2,000 years ago he stood and he listened to those words, crucify him, crucify him. I wish he was never born. He absorbs all that hostile heart and anger. He says, give me your hatred, your anger, your malice, your poison. The night before he is betrayed, he says, I will drink this cup. And in so doing, he cleanses and heals and redeems and washes. It says, you give me your heart and I will give you mine. Did you notice the order a minute ago? The order was not clean up your act and then I will love you. It was not clean up your mouth or obey me and then I will give you a new heart. It was I will give you a new heart and then you will want to and be able to. I will put my spirit in you. What do your words say about you? And so what are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to do with this? Well, I think application number one, according to Jesus' brother, is this. This is how he says it, just a chapter later in the book. He says, submit yourselves then to God and resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. This is Jesus' brother's way of saying the first thing you have to do is realize how bad you are and admit it. Stop laughing at the coarse speech and start confessing how sick my heart is. Wail over the pain and the jokes and the misogyny and the sarcasm and the destruction I have caused. Grieve. Or as we say around here, ABC, admit that my words are not accidents, but symptoms of my heart. That I have a bad heart. And I need a transplant and believe that Jesus died to give me his new heart. And commit the following for the rest of my life, including committing my speech to him. Jesus, I give you the reins of my tongue. Jesus, you have all of me, including the words I say. Jesus, I admit I'm a sinner. I believe you love sinners, and I commit to letting you change me from the inside out. That's the application of every sermon every week in a Christian church. But let me make it even more practical. How do we do this? How should we live then? Application number 2, again, Jesus' brother says it this way. He says, everyone, since this is true, since my tongue is fire, since my tongue is poison, he says, everyone. Who? Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to speak. I'm really not good at this. And I need help to apply Jesus' teaching. And so I have mentors and buddies and pastors who I talk to. And there's one that I like to call when I'm really angry or upset and my mouth starts running off, when I'm angry at some driver for what they did, or I'm angry at Claire for what she didn't do, or I'm angry at my children for not being grown up. And it's starting to come out. And so I call him and I start to tell him what's going on, because I got to get it out of me, right? And he always asks me the same question. Andrew, have you prayed for them yet? Before he validates, before he argues, he just says, hey, I hear what you're saying about your wife, but have you prayed for your wife yet? Hey, I know drivers are crazy, but have you prayed for that driver? Have you prayed that God would bless that crazy driver and keep him safe because obviously he's not keeping himself safe? Have you prayed for that stranger? Have you prayed for them? What he's telling me is to go and pour out the filth in my heart to the Lord. And every time I do, he gives it back to me clean. And I'm capable of loving my wife and my children and strangers. Because I give Jesus my heart and he gives me his. And so let's practice right now. Turn to your neighbor and just say, have you prayed for them yet? Turn and just look at somebody and practice this question. Have you prayed for them yet? Wives, what are you going to say to your husband when he starts to run his mouth? Have you prayed for them yet? Not shut up, not, how could you say that? Just, hey, have you prayed for them? I'd love to have this conversation. Go pray for them, I'll come back. Husbands, what are you going to say to your wife? What are you going to say to your kids? Have you prayed for them yet? Have you reminded your soul that this is a person made in the image of God? And if he's worth their life, he is worth my love. Let's do this now. Let's pray. God, there are people who are in this room who've just found out a heart transplant is necessary. They just got the diagnosis. And the donor has already given his life. The donor has died. And so if that's you this morning and you're realizing for the first time or the 100th time that you need a heart transplant, that no filter will work, that no behavior modification will work, you need a new heart, then the chair you are sitting in is the operation table, and the surgeon, the Holy Spirit, is just waiting on your okay to perform the full procedure, to take your heart of stone, your heart of bitterness and resentment and anger, your heart of pain, and to give you the heart of Jesus. All you got to do is say yes. All you got to do is say yes. Jesus, we want clean hearts. We want you to transform our speech. And so all of us in this room, who want that, would just say, God, would you change my heart? And by doing so, would you change my speech and my behavior that I might look like and reflect your heart and your spirit?